Oh, and I'll invite you to my classroom. I made a classroom on chess.com for this. Okay, looks like we're live. Made a stream. Classroom is here. All right, I sent you an invite.
All right.
Chess.com.
All right, join.
Okay. All right, so today our main goal is to continue working on becoming more comfortable with sacrifice. We've covered one topic which folks on stream won't have seen, which is we did a session about some rook takes c3 in the Sicilian. And we looked at one example of a set of options from a game of yours, and then we looked at one game of mine, in which I did play rook takes c3. So that's pretty much the experience we have so far. And just traditionally, so that anyone out there knows, you're a player who has very little experience with sacrificing. You've accepted some sacrifices, people have attacked you, but you don't feel comfortable sacrificing. Partly because you simply just don't have the experience doing it, right? And until you do something, you just don't have experience with it, and then you don't have comfort. And partly also because you have, I think, a feeling that if you make a sacrifice, it's putting more pressure and responsibility on you to come up with really good moves afterwards. So that if after your sacrifice you play a bunch of random moves and your opponent plays a bunch of random moves, they'll eventually win the game. So once you've made the sacrifice, you have to continue playing brilliantly. And that kind of extra pressure has made you reluctant to try sacrifices. And I would say that it's true that under a certain level, sacrifices have a lower success rate actually. And then there's like a level where sacrifices have a higher success rate, where people start to have better offensive weapons and poorer defense. And then again, you get to the top levels, grandmasters, and again, sacrifices have a lower success rate because the defensive level and technique is so high, because they stay calm when they're getting attacked and it doesn't bother them, right? At low levels, basically, players are very unlikely to finish a game with checkmate. They just don't calculate well enough to find a clear checkmate. So even if they execute a quote-unquote winning attack, they'll eventually lose the endgame after not finding a forced checkmate. And then you reach a middle level, which is where you are now, where you have the skills to calculate some attacks and checkmates, and actually people will defend worse in general than they attack. And so sacrifices are relatively more effective at your level. So that's where you are. So normally I would say around 1200, it would make a lot of sense for people to start exploring some sacrifices and attacks and stuff like that, because they're starting to have the tactical skills and the pattern recognition to make something of it. So you're just a tiny bit late to it, so to speak, which is fine. Everybody has their own path of what they work on and learn first, but you're playing around a 1700 chess.com rapid level now, 1650 to 1700 level. So you're amply ready that you could be doing this once you feel comfortable with it. Sometimes I'll find players all the way up to 2000 who basically have no experience sacrificing. They just never dip their toes into it. And rarely will you find anybody under 1,000 who started trying it. But, sometimes an occasional person will, have some affection for 19th century gambits and trying to get attacks started quickly. So when we looked at rook takes c3, we mostly looked at it as a positional sacrifice as opposed to a tactical sacrifice. There are a whole branch of rook takes c3s, which are more tactical and kind of leading to attacking right away afterwards. And we'll do a second day on those, but I wanted to step back and do something different today, even though it can be nice to do something to consistently work through just rook takes c3, 4 different flavors, blah, blah, blah. I thought I'd take you back to the most simple of things, which is being down a pawn without any specific threats. So being down a pawn, but like compensation for the pawn, which is just going to be stuff like, and these terms may not all land immediately, but it's going to be stuff like active pieces, freedom to move, initiative, which is the ability to make some threats, even though they're not like direct killing threats, but some threats that are kind of pushing your opponent around, controlling them a little bit. So that's what I want to get back to first, because that's like a little bit more of a basic, and the rook takes c3 stuff is a little more advanced. So we're going to go back and do like a basic, like here's just a position where you're down a pawn, but like there's long-term dangers and difficulties for your opponent. So
Yeah, that's actually something that I really wanted to learn also. I mean, yeah, actually more than the other stuff is how to handle down a pawn situations, because that's super common. Like you see it in basically every opening. Always you reach a variation where if you sack a pawn, you like get something better than if you don't do it.
yeah, and I think it's going to be easier to talk about what compensation looks like and what compensation you need and stuff like that when you're down a pawn than when you're down like a piece or a rook, right? So if I start trying to explain to you, here's a position that Aronian played yesterday where he had one protected pass pawn that was as good as a rook. I mean, it's a very confusing situation and hard to apply to other situations and hard to estimate and evaluate. So when we're down a pawn, it's going to be a little bit simpler, so to speak, to sort of figure out what's going on. All right, so we're going to get into it now, and we've got a position here, which is like a theoretical position, meaning a position that grandmasters have played repeatedly in tournament games with white and with black, so it's not considered, winning or losing, but just playable. Some people prefer white, some people prefer black. It can come from a few different openings, this position, actually, but two of the main openings it comes from are the Nimzo Indian and the Karo Khan. One is an E4 opening, one is a D4 opening, but and this position at the moment would be from a group of positions which are characterized by the pawn structure, the isolated queen pawn, so they're often called IQP positions, but here we're going to be looking at a variation where white loses the pawn immediately and just plays down a pawn. Okay, but I'm just showing you where it comes from. Nowadays, you won't see GMs playing a bunch of quote-unquote like stupid or beginnery gambits, right? Like you won't see a lot of GMs playing the King's Gambit. You won't see a lot of GMs playing like the Scotch Gambit. You won't see GMs playing the Albin counter gambit. A lot of gambits where you force a pawn sack in the first 2-3 moves are just out of favor. They're trying to force a certain style of game, and the antidotes are kind of known, and also they're inferior because you're trying to do it too soon. You're trying to force a gambit style position. So these are for players like the opposite of you who like absolutely their dream is like a Danish gambit or something, where the opponent just mindlessly captures every pawn that they sack and they get ahead 6 tempi in development, and then, oh, it's so fun, they get to be a genius. Those kind of gambits are basically not effective at GM level and are not very common. But this kind of gambit that I'm about to show you is ubiquitous at GM level. Like they're doing stuff like this all the time, every game. Sometimes the pawn sacks get accepted, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're right on the surface, sometimes they're under the surface. But this kind of stuff is just normal bread and butter for all GMs. They all understand that if the position calls for it, they can leave a pawn undefended, and the opponent may or may not want to take it. So in this position here, a standard move for white is knight e4. Now, is white 6 tempi ahead here or in the middle of a mating attack? Not yet. Not yet, right? So instead of knight e4, white could play a move like bishop e3, defending the d4 pawn. There's no obvious reason why white can't do that, right? It's just that GMs are always pushing, or not always, all of them, but most GMs are generally pushing to maximize their position, right? They're looking for the best move that they can. They're looking to put pressure on the opponent, right? So bishop e3 is a move which doesn't apply maximum pressure to the opponent, right? It sort of defends your pawn, but gives them another tempo to work on. The main problem in black's position is the bishop c8. That's the main problem. The secondary question in these positions is maintaining control over d5 if possible, so white can't push and open up the center. But normally you're facing a tiny deficit in development here. Not dramatic, but a tiny deficit, and your main problem is just the bishop on c8. And if you have to choose between b6, bishop b7 is one plan, right? b6, bishop b7. Or you could play a6, b5, bishop b7, even slower but more ambitious in terms of queenside space. Or you can play bishop d7, knight b4, bishop c6. Let's say some version like that of bringing the bishop out through d7. So there's like a plus and minus to each of those options. Black, that's like the main thing black has to figure out in a position like this, is what are they doing about the bishop on c8. And so from a white perspective, you may want to put the most pressure on your opponent that you can before that bishop's getting out, right? You're trying to push the position a little bit, because although you don't have the sure sense of impending doom that you would have if you'd sacrificed material and you knew every endgame was losing, let's say you know that most endgames are going to be unpleasant as white, right? Like, you're not looking to play a bunch of simple moves, trade 3 or 4 pieces. Like, that'll be a little bit disappointing, even if it doesn't lead to a loss. Maybe you hold on and draw. You're not going to enjoy yourself so much. So they're looking to press. And so they're more looking to play moves like rook to d1, saying, like, if you take on d4, something bad is going to happen to you because you're going to open up my rook, and then I'll move my bishops more aggressively. So you could imagine a move for white like rook a d1, knight d4, queen d4, bishop g5. That would be an example of a typical idea a GM might embrace. The idea is that all the white pieces are more aggressive here than they would be if we played bishop e3. And then additionally, if this position turned out to be bad for black, it would mean you could play rook d1 instead of bishop e3. And let's say your opponent can't take on d4, or they slightly don't want to take on d4, right? They could, but it's slightly bad for them. And so you get them to play a move like bishop d7. Now I never had to spend a move defending my pawn on d4, right? So now I continue with my more aggressive plans, which might be a move like rook e1, or it might be a move like h4. But as a basic thing, we can understand that white would rather play a move like h4 or rook e1 rather than bishop e3. Does that much ring true?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's at stake, and that's why you see GMs pushing and offering pawn sacks sometimes. It's because they're trying to play like the strongest moves they can, and they don't want to be sort of slowed down. Okay, so in this particular case, rook d1 is a very similar move to the move I'm going to show you, but the move I'm going to show you is knight e4. And this is a move which grandmasters have played up to probably 40 years ago in this position. And so that was pre-computers. They didn't know for sure whether black should take on d4, right? The first people playing this position as white, they may have been grandmasters versus, average club players, but they didn't know for sure. They didn't have those kind of computer answers, right? So you might ask 10 masters about this position, and 8 out of 10 would say black shouldn't take on d4. It's unlikely that position will be okay for black. They'll probably be somewhere between worse and much worse, because white has enough of the things that you don't yet fully understand, but, development, activity for the pieces, and initiative, the most nebulous of those ideas, right? Mm-hmm. So they say white's going to have too strong an initiative, black shouldn't take this pawn. Maybe 8 out of 10 masters would say that 40 years ago. And 1 out of 10 masters would say, well, it's probably about balanced, so it's a bit risky to take the pawn, but like if you really wanted to, you could try, and who knows, maybe it's playable. And then 1 out of 10 would say, I can grab that pawn and get away with it. Because the thing is, even with masters, you would have some variety of opinions and takes. People have different values, right? One person values the initiative more than somebody else. Um, Overall, this is a slightly favorable version of a pawn sack for white that I'm starting you off with in order to encourage you to feel more comfortable with them. I don't need to start off by showing you a position where the initiative's not good enough and you shouldn't sack a pawn because you already don't really want to. So that's why I'm saying maybe 8 out of 10 would have been in favor of this pre-computer, And so, but then what happens would be you'd have a process of every now and then somebody tries taking it, right? And then you get a game where someone's taken it, and you can analyze the game and try and see, was it good or bad, right? What actually happened here. You can play out the moves, and let's say white loses, you can look, did white have a better continuation? Let's say black loses, you can look, did black have a way to defend better than this? And once you've got, 10, 20 master games that have been played in a position, then the other masters and grandmasters who've looked over some of those games will start to be more confident in their opinion, right? And that's when in the old days people would say, theory says blah, blah, blah. Theory was just the accumulated wisdom and generally accepted position. And even once you had theory accepted, you'd still have 1 out of 100 people who would say, theory's wrong, right? These other 30 masters have concluded that black is worse here, but I know that it can still be done, okay? And modern players won't really know what that even feels like, probably because you've all turned on a computer engine and seen quote unquote the truth, and then you can't really disagree with it anymore. But when I was starting to play chess, computer engines were just pretty weak still. And so I remember having variations that were considered bad that I would play. And I thought I was right, and every world champion in history or whatever, or every current grandmaster or leading opening expert was wrong. And eventually it would be shown that my idea was right. Okay? And maybe 1 in a million times some crackpot like me was right. And 99 grandmasters were all wrong. And eventually some computer engine showed actually the crazy guy, the crazy 1500 playing a stupid line at his local chess club was right. And all the GMs and their accepted wisdom was wrong. Occasionally that would be the case, right? But generally, these kind of conclusions of theory, they were often very accurate. So you can go back and look at a lot of openings and see what did grandmasters think about this in 1990. And then you can show it to a supercomputer now and say, what does the supercomputer think about it? And wow, the GMs will have been playing, 15 top engine moves in a row, a lot of the time. So anyway, accepted, general thought here was that it's a somewhat bad idea for black to take the pawn, but that's what we're going to look at anyway. So that's the introduction to this position. So black's going to go knight d4. It hits the queen and knight. So white's going to take on d4 and black's going to take on d4. And one thing about pawn sacks is time is generally going to be even more important in positions with a pawn sack than in random positions, right? That in open positions, time is worth more than in closed positions, right? But any position with material imbalance or sacrifice, the specifics and the timing and the tactics are going to be more important than equal material positions. Okay? So when black plays a move like knight d4, it's important for white to play very, very smoothly here, right? So we're not looking to lose a tempo with a move like queen e3, knight f3, queen f3. Basically here I've just lost a tempo, right? Because I moved my queen back and forth, and now in the resulting position where I've sacked a pawn, it's actually black who gets to move first. They get to play one defensive move before I even play my first offensive move, or maybe develop my rook, or whatever it is I need to do. Okay, so there's going to be a really high premium on playing smooth moves here for white. So you're really going to see a lot of moves like knight takes d4, right? So now I get the next move for white. Now let's give you your first test, just keeping us as active learners. What move might you consider for white in this position right after giving up the pawn?
Well, bishop c3 is the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay, perfect. We'll stop you right there. That is a smooth move and a tempo move and an initiative move. Whether or not you know what the initiative is, that's a move that's playing with the initiative. So it's controlling things, it's improving your pieces, but making threats, and it's multiple threats, so it's putting some more pressure on your opponent, right? because you're attacking the queen, but you're also making them worry about breaking up their king side at f6, right? Um, so that's a perfect example of a move. The only other move that would be the kind of move you might consider would be a move like rook to d1. But neither of those moves is as directly controlling the direction of the game as bishop c3. They're fine moves, and there are positions down a pawn where you can play a move like rook d1 and you're okay. But you're definitely right to look at bishop c3 first in this position. And now, Francisco, what I would like to do is have you spar this position once or twice. Okay?
All right.
So we're just going to see about like trying to practice the position.
Okay.
And so I will play for black, and you can play for white.
All right.
Okay. And we'll get to do this more than once, so you don't need to put too much stress on your moves. You can try some things out. You can take them back. Try something else out. Not too much stress or pressure. We're just trying to get a feel.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I mean, it's kind of hard to not tunnel vision once I see something that looks good.
Sure.
But
You can try something that looks good, and if it didn't work, you can come back and look for
yeah,
other ideas.
yeah. I mean, I'm wondering if you are testing me with this move so that I like just sort of making a mistake on purpose or something. But it looks really man, if I were playing as black, I don't know what I would be doing about just simply knight of six.
Okay. Is that what you want to play?
I mean, I'm still looking at it,
Okay.
but yeah, it looks pretty wonderful. Yeah, that is what I want to play.
Okay.
Okay, and now bishop takes on f6 as well, followed by queen g4, and then queen h5, and yeah. Ah, there's that. Yeah, that's what I missed. I
Okay.
was like, is black getting mated here? But okay. I still think this should be sort of okay, but yeah, not great for white. Yeah. I mean, but sort of okay because even if you just, I mean, basically probably lost all the advantage already, but at the very least, I shouldn't be concerned about the minus pawn here because like extra pawn doesn't look particularly impressive.
Okay. So you tried to knock black out. You tried to find a forced win. You miscalculated. So you may
Yeah.
have given up some of your advantage because you used some of your energy, right? You played some forcing moves and
Yeah.
they didn't achieve anything. But you still feel, looking at the position, like you have enough compensation for being down a pawn.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Um,
What would your compensation be if you tried to put it into strategic ideas or words?
well, I mean, basically, it's not like I found much compensation, but just the fact that the pawn structure looks so ridiculous for black.
Okay,
Like,
well that
yeah,
could be
between
compensation.
that and the bishop over there that's completely locked in behind the pawns, it doesn't and the king that's safer on this side
Yeah,
looks like
perfect.
with that should be sort of enough. I mean,
Yep,
like I'd expect if I plug this into a computer to say that it's about equal
somewhere
perhaps,
around
or
there.
maybe slightly better for black even because of the pawn, but not
Okay.
much more than that.
Yeah, good evaluating, Francisco. So basically, the two factors that you have are the bad pawn structure around the black king and the bad bishop on c8, and those two should add up to being worth a pawn. So it should be about equal. Let's go back and start over, okay?
All right.
So we'll go bishop c3 for you, and I will play queen b6 again.
All right. Let's see.
We'll see if you can find something you like even better than that.
Mhm. Wow, finding it really, really hard. Yeah,
Okay.
I know. Like, I thought about like to give you an idea of what I was thinking of. Like, yeah, I thought about 95, but then I thought, well, I mean, that carries a threat, but it's very easily parried. I mean, they're just going to move the H pawn, and then that's going to be the end of it.
Okay.
Then
Now, let me just stop you there for 1 second. Making your opponent move the pawns in front of their king is often a small accomplishment. It might be the end of your threat, but your
that creates a
initiative can
weakness.
continue, right? Remember
Uh-huh.
that first variation you tried for a forced win that didn't quite work? If black's pawn had been on h6 instead of h7, their position would have been much, much, much worse when you played queen h5, right? It might have collapsed right then and there. So making them play
Mhm.
h6 is not, it may be the end of your threat, but it's not the end of your initiative or your play, right? So you may feel that you want something even better than knight g5 h6. Then you have to retreat, and then they get one defensive move. So you've spent one whole attacking move to make, or one whole tempo, right, to make them make this one little weakness with h6, right? But it might also be okay. It might also be okay.
Okay,
You were
and
going to
the
say
other
something else you were
yeah.
thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't think about much else, but
Okay.
I thought about Queen C2 is another thing I thought,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, again, it doesn't look so wonderful because after Black trades on E4, then I mean I have the like the queen is behind the bishop is not like particularly impressive. It's they're going to push like I don't know, one of the pawns, maybe F5 like you pushed before or something,
Yeah.
and that's going to be that. Like it doesn't seem like we are getting anywhere. Uh,
Okay.
and yeah, then I thought about like moving one of the rooks so to activate them a little bit further, but that seems a little bit slow for saying that I'm down a pawn.
Okay.
That would be just a slow improving move, and yeah, in other positions might work, but it's slow.
Right. So your thought process makes perfect sense to me, Francisco. Basically, what it's lacking is a little bit of confidence in what you're doing, but the order in which you're looking at things is correct. The first thing to look at is, do you have anything decisive by taking on f6, right? Breaking their structure immediately and removing the main defender on f6, which is their best defender, and then can you follow up and like break through with your queen plus, maybe a bishop. If that doesn't work, you can look at moves like knight g5 or queen c2, trying to poke and just make a pawn structure weakness. If you feel like tempo-wise that's not amazing, then the next thing is, well, if I can't punch through with the material I currently have, what are my options to get the rooks involved, right? And so for getting the rooks involved, there would be two different ways, maybe three different ways to think about it. One would be rook e1 to e3. Like think of a rook lift to make the queen h5 idea stronger, right? So if your rook were already on e1, then your idea of trading on f6 twice, queen h5, f5, rook e3, that looks killer, right? So rook e1 would prepare that. Your other idea would be to play a move like rook a to c1 or rook a to d1. And that's a slower approach, but it is an approach as well. Rook c1, your idea would be you spot kind of a weak square on c7. You're trying to use the open file to sort of control your opponent and just continue getting your pieces better than theirs, so they've got less and less stuff they can do. On the other hand, rook d1 would be played to basically tactically prevent bishop d7. You're basically trying to say something like, if they go bishop d7, you'll play knight f6, bishop f6, bishop f6, pawn f6, bishop h7, king h7, rook d7. Right? You'll win back your pawn, and your position is just as good as ever. Right? Now, it may be that the rook lift idea is even better, because if you look at this exact position and you consider, queen check, king g7, queen check, king h7, rook d3, you might not be interested in even taking their bishop on d7. So that shows maybe the power of the idea of having a rook lift to d3 or e3. Maybe no reason not to have the rook on d1, just their bishop's always hanging as well. Right? So you're correct in the order in which you're looking at the things. Taking on f6, then maybe knight g5 or queen c2, then maybe rook d1. Queen c2 would have the advantage that you're not losing time moving your knight multiple times, but it has the disadvantage that that defensive move f5 is generally better for black than g6 or h6. The f5 move actually gives them room to defend their king in a nice way while still leaving a g7 and h7 pawn for him to hide behind, whereas g6 and h6 each make holes. And then knight g5, h6, it feels like you're losing time. Now, so your thought process makes sense. You don't have like the full confidence for it, so you don't understand that a move like rook d1 or rook e1, you're probably doing great. It looks like a very nice move. However, you could also calculate better. White has stronger options in some of the moves that you were trying to calculate. Let's do a little more sparring, just putting some moves on the board, because we can always try multiple times. So why don't you just try a move, like go for knight f6 or knight g5 again, or try rook d1 or rook e1. I'll play some so-so moves, and you can just see how you do.
Let's see.
So let's just explore it a little bit, even if you're not seeing something that convinces you.
Okay, let's go with knight f6 again, and let's see if I can find something different.
Okay, last time I took with my bishop, right? So
yeah,
since I didn't lose immediately, I'll repeat that, although pawn takes is another interesting line.
Okay, so okay, so queen e4.
Okay, you're trying a new move this time, queen e4.
Yeah.
All right, rook d8.
D8. Okay.
I assume you calculated that if I played g6, you could take my bishop for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, obviously queen h7 has to be good, but I'm trying to look a little bit into it before.
You can also just play it if you know you're going to play it, and it makes it easier for you to calculate.
All right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, queen h7. Yeah, I mean, it can't be bad. It can only be like good or very good.
Right.
Okay, so
I mean, the only alternative would have been maybe like bishop b4, if that kept the king from escaping and forced checkmate. But if you calculate bishop b4 g6 and the bishop's not hanging on f6 anymore, then you should just take on h7 and keep going.
okay, no. Oh, okay.
All right, let me push you to play faster just so you can get more games in because we need to get
All right.
experience for you.
Yeah.
You have to get just a
Sure.
feeling of how a lot of games can look and feel.
Okay. So yeah, if I have to play faster than Bishop F6,
Great.
and then mm, let's see, does a check do anything? Is the question. Probably not much. Maybe back here. Yeah, but there's another pawn over there. Um,
All your moves are correct, by the way, if that helps with your confidence.
all right. Yeah, up until here, I didn't have doubts that this would be at the very least okay. But yeah, now how to continue from here and do something meaningful is a different story. Yeah, here I have no idea how I should continue, to be honest,
Fair enough.
because I mean, like there are a couple of checks with the queen, but they don't seem to do anything. I mean, the king e7, and then the pawn is
Yeah.
protected. Everything like seems sort of okay.
Right.
Then and the bishop would be hanging after that, so I
So
would have to do something about the bishop.
let
And the
me
queen is still staring at b2, by the way.
let me try and do an experiment with you then on this. What's your guess, your instinct of what the next move would be for white here?
I guess. Well, if I had a guess, I would probably be able to to have suggested something. Yeah, I have no clue what white's best move would be here.
No, you have no instinct. Like if you were
No,
playing a
I have no instinct as to what would be the best course of action here now.
okay. Well, I'm pretty sure you've looked at Queen H8 and Queen H6, King E7,
Uh-huh.
and didn't feel like either of those moves did anything, so you semi rejected them. You thought of them. They must have been instincts of yours, or maybe not instincts, but you have some thought process where you look at your violent moves and see if they accomplish anything. They don't
Yeah.
seem to, so you probably semi rejected them. And then you had no other move that came to mind?
Uh, no, not really.
So if I
No, not
point
really.
out that you haven't finished developing your rooks, you're not aware of that? You had no feeling like you
Yeah, I
might move
thought
a
I
rook?
thought about developing the rooks, but but I don't know. I didn't find something like very um like strong, so to say.
Okay.
Like I mean, I thought about like moving one of my rooks to d1, for instance.
Perfect. So if you thought of that, that's the correct move, Francisco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in this position, since the king will be reasonably happy to go to e7, there's no point chasing him there. You haven't developed your rooks. There are two open files, right? So basically, you should be looking at rook a to c1 or d1 mainly here, I would guess. Evaluation-wise, you won back your pawn. You didn't checkmate the king, but you chased it out of its castle. It has some pawn cover in the middle, so it's not going to be immediately checkmated in 2 or 3 moves. But white has like an obvious advantage, right? It's just going to be easier to defend your king than the opponent's king. And if you ever reached an endgame, your h pawn is also an advantage in any endgame. So basically, you're just better, but you need to develop your rooks. So I don't know, but I would guess rook d1 would be a good move. Yeah, and okay, I mean, this is very successful for white, right? This is enough that you should play knight f6 check if you see this position here. It's very good for you.
So what happens if black is like I still want to be up a pawn and they grab on b2? I know that pawn usually doesn't mean much, but what if they do that here?
Sure, and if you're worried about that, you could play the move b3. You can play normal
Oh, okay.
moves, right? You don't have to keep sacrificing just because at one point in the game you did, right? If
Yeah, the
materials
main reason that
re-equalized,
would deter me from playing b3 is one, it looks slow, and
mhm,
secondly, it puts another pawn on a light square when I have a light square bishop.
right. I mean, my guess is that after b3 you still have your advantage. So honestly, it's not a very bad move here, right? Your advantage is now a little bit slower versus faster, right? Their king's a little bit bad forever. Your h pawn is an advantage, so you can play any move you want, right? Specifically here, rook d1, queen b2 loses to bishop g6. So that's like a little
Mm-hmm.
detail.
Threatening mate and also rook.
And the rook. So that's a little detail that makes rook d1 probably a little better than b3. But honestly, if you play rook d1 and your opponent plays bishop d7, you might end up playing b3 then. So it might not make much of a difference whether or not you played b3, you know? It might be possible to keep playing more initiative-y, so to speak, with a move like bishop e4 next. Or maybe now you can play rook d2 instead of spending a move on b3. And then if they go bishop b5, maybe double rooks, and maybe that's good for you. But basically, this position now is now a little bit more like a kind of position I would expect you to be comfortable with. Materials equal, and it's a little
Yeah.
bit of like a technical game where you're playing for two different things. Just some useful moves like rook to d1, you know, maybe b3, so your pawn's hanging. Another useful move to play at some point is h4. H4 doesn't weaken your king too much. It avoids back rank mates, and it just makes the pawn like a little faster if the moment comes at some point. But
Yeah, oh yeah, sorry.
a pretty good setup might be f2 g3 h4 for your kingside pawns. Um, so I mean you can pretty safely play h4 at some point. It'll improve your position. You could put your bishop on e4 or f3, so it looks in two directions.
Yeah, this is the kind of position that I feel comfortable with. You're right in that. I mean, the reason I wasn't finding a move before is because I was looking for something like a little bit more crashing. But
Yeah,
uh, but yeah, I mean, if I had that position like a normal game, I would just be playing very normal moves.
right.
So
So basically, here against queen b6, you found a threat strong enough that I had to give back the pawn, and you emerge in a position that's pleasant for you. But because of a couple trades, it's no longer like an immediate checkmate kind of position. All right, let's go back again. Start a new game. You'll play bishop c3 again because it worked well so far. No reason
okay,
right now to reject the move. You could always play something else if you wanted to, but it feels fine. I'll play queen b6 again. Your turn.
okay. Let's see. So another one of the moves that I mentioned was 95. So yeah, let's try that.
Okay.
Okay, and now let's see. Mm, table here. Okay, that's well, we can always just go back potentially. Yeah, okay, so let's go with the idea of the weakness that you mentioned before. So let's go back to e4 with a knight and just spend a tempo provoking the pawn to h6.
Mm-hmm. All right. Pressure's on. I'll just make a blind trade like most 1600s probably would.
Let's see. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think honestly at 1600 a lot of people already just watched enough videos and stuff that they know that the trading blindly is not good. But this is a trade that might very well
They
happen because after I recapture them there is that F5 move.
see
So now
in
let's see.
theory they've heard that trading blindly can be a mistake, but if they're in a position they don't really know what else to do, so then they still end up trading blindly.
Yeah, it can happen. Yeah, yeah, that's true. When there is a when nothing better sort of comes up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'll recapture with the bishop.
Okay.
Actually, probably a poor choice now that I think about
I'll
it. Okay.
just develop for black.
Oh wait, if I go there, okay, go here. Oh, there's also that much. Could be a thing. Oh yeah, what about that? No, wait. Yeah. Wait a sec. This could be decent, it could be just horrible. Uh, let's see. So I play here. Okay, so let's try Queen G4. Okay. And okay, so now I go here. There's this again. So probably not that one. Maybe here, here. No, because we're set. I would like. Oh, and if that, there's that. Ah, yeah, okay. So here, mm, then what? Here. Oh, there's that, and I don't know, because there's this. Yeah, okay, so yeah, Queen G6, I suppose.
Okay. And one question for you: do you prefer the position you're getting with knight g5 or the position you got with knight f6 check?
Well, the position I got with knight f6 check seemed a lot better. Here, I mean, I'm just trying to see if there are like threats that I can pose, however obvious. But I mean, like I thought maybe I can like work with that with the weaknesses that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm mainly trying it because you said we should try the moves that you already tried and see what you can come up with in those. But yeah, knight g5, I mean from the get-go already looks a little bit ridiculous to me to go there and then have to move away from there.
Mm-hmm.
But knight f6, yeah, the position I get at the end is like what you mentioned, like the kind of position that I'm usually comfortable with in a normal game.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. So you're correct. Knight f6 is the better move. The way that we figure that out, though, is partly by just trying a bunch of things and then getting a feel, right?
Yeah.
Excuse
Bless
me.
you. Bless you. Okay. So yeah, check, close here, check. Oh yeah, okay. So check here, check here, check here. Yeah, well, at least it looks like it gets the material back, right? Like, I mean, Queen H7, King F7, Bishop G6, King moves, Queen G7. And yeah, this looks very good. I mean, we also have Bishop F6.
Are you
Yeah, Bishop F6, maybe. Okay, now we also have potentially we can bring a rook to the party. Uh, if we bring one of the rooks over there, obviously a bishop will block, like something like bishop c6. So yeah, I still think it's a good idea. So rook a c1 probably. Okay, and now. Right over here. Does this check do anything? Yeah, well, if move back, he can't move, so has to go forward. After goes forward, the bishop e4. And it's looking decent. Not sure if it's great. Ah, well, at the very least, we have that bishop hanging over there. So yeah, bishop e5. Oh yeah, because there's yeah, I forgot about the small detail. That one is not. I mean, if you move the king away from the file, then there's no pin on the bishop. Um, hmm, okay. I mean, she'll still be fine, obviously, but a little bit inaccurate from the perspective of why I played it. Well, I can always repeat. Uh, oh, I can also play Rook F D1 maybe. Oh wait, because I'm getting. Well, no, I'm not getting destroyed because the bishop check I just move and there's no real follow-up. So, uh, F1, what will defend over here? Yeah, I think probably Rook FD1 is okay. Looks like. Oh yeah, Rook FD1. Okay, King H1.
Okay, I resign.
Oh,
So, one of the things that you'll see when you spar is sometimes the results will not immediately point you towards the best move because you played this knight g5 line, which I can tell you as a spoiler, is not as good as knight f6, right? But I played worse as black against knight g5, right? And so you're mostly going to be sparring with people around 15 to 1700 or so, right? So I'm trying to play at that level. Sometimes you'll play something that's less good, but for practical reasons, it might actually prove very good, right? Like they might just, it might leave them more room for mistakes, or it's just random sometimes, where they play better or worse. So here you played knight g5 and you were winning very, very smoothly despite not breaking the pawn structure in the same way, right? In the knight f6 game, uh, you played the best moves, but they were so forcing that I was forced to just run away from checkmate, and then you got a position where you still have a lot of work to do to convert the game. So sparring will give you different kinds of information, but the more you spar, the more that information starts to become useful and good, right? Because maybe you spar that position a couple times, and at some point you run into somebody who, instead of playing bishop d7, maybe they immediately play f5. And then you get some game where they play f5, bishop f6, and then you never really make enough progress to checkmate them, right? So by playing multiple games, you get multiple views, you get more data, and then your ideas become better as you refine that data, right? I'm making an effort to not always play the very best move for black, because then you don't get a real sparring feeling. But still, you felt like the knight f6 move was like the more conclusive one, which is good on your part to have felt that, even though this game was going well for you. Also, by the time I asked you about it, right, you were already playing queen g6 when I asked you, and things are already going very well for white at that point, but you still were clear that knight f6 was like very clear compared to this. All right, let's go back here again. I play queen b6 again. Have at it. Oh, sorry. We
okay.
could let you. You want to play bishop c3 again? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, bishop c3. I can't come up with anything else
It,
anyway.
it looks it looks very
So,
smooth, right? Now that you've seen it, so.
uh, yeah. Uh, I mean, even if I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't be able to find anything else. Like, I mean, anything else seems like I'm just down a pawn. Uh, okay, so yeah, now, okay, so I had mentioned also Queen C2, which looks a little bit bananas, but
And you can repeat
uh,
knight f6 or knight g5 if you want, right? You don't have to always do something different.
uh,
You could try a rook move.
yeah, maybe one of the
You
rook
could take on
moves would
f6, and I could
be.
take with my g pawn instead of my bishop if you want to feel that position.
I think if you took with your G pawn, even if I'm down a pawn, I wouldn't feel like very scared in that position.
Okay.
But yeah, the maybe one of the rook moves I could try. Mm, yeah, perhaps. Okay, so let's try rook fd1. Okay. Um,
There's an interesting thing that happens in these kind of initiative positions is sometimes your opponent feels like they can't really play bishop d7 because of your rook. So they feel like they have to try to counter the file with the rook first and then develop the bishop. But anytime the rooks start fighting each other and one person doesn't have their rooks connected, they're taking tactical risks, right? So rook d8
mhm.
is a risky move.
So,
It was that or blindly trading on e4 again.
mhm. So this.
All right, just do something so that you keep getting
Yeah, sure. Okay,
experience.
bishop f6.
Okay.
Knight f6. And queen to yeah, if I go there, there's that. Uh, keep forgetting about that move. Yeah, but then there's that. Okay. No. Wait a second. First here, then there. Here. Yeah, that's more key there. Okay. And it's- Okay. Well, if I have to play a move, I'll go with Queen H5 again.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Okay, and now if I go here. mm, Okay, so yeah, Queen G5. At this point, at the very least, I feel like sort of confident that I can get some sort of, well, not really a repetition because I can escape over there, but at the very least, it doesn't seem like I'm going to ever be lost here. So yeah, perhaps if I go over here, I can at the very least get the pawn back. But if I go there, it looks a little bit better, honestly. Um, yeah, I think Queen F6 looks okay. Okay. If I go here, take the although the release gets something. Yeah, okay, so wait, can I no. Queen H8 followed by Queen H7. Okay, this be here potentially there. Okay, so is okay. Okay, yeah. So Rook A B1. There's this. Okay, got it. So gotta be careful with that. But maybe okay. Okay, so yeah, simple probably would be Queen H4 first. Okay, now if I make that trade and take over there, I enter an endgame that's looking somewhat decent. Oh, no, wait, because there's no such thing. So yeah, that looks okay. So yeah, Queen of 6
Okay.
and Rook B7.
All right. And we've got an endgame that we could play out, right?
Yeah.
Um, I'm not too upset about it. You're not too upset about it. We don't yet know who's going to win the game. All right. Let me point out a key moment here after Queen G5, King F8. This is an example of where better calculation has an impact on one's ability to play these kind of sacrificial positions, right? here you didn't find the best move, and I think it would be a challenge to find it. But it would have a big impact on how much you win or lose in these kind of positions, right? Just like the first time you played knight f6 check, you didn't find queen e4, and the second time you found queen e4, right? And that made a big difference on that position, right? So look at this again for 30 seconds and look for, do you see any tactical themes or
Yeah, I
ideas?
mean, at the moment, I also thought that maybe that's where it's at, I suppose. Now that you mentioned that there's a tactic here, I thought about if there could be some idea with bishop f5 and then trace the rooks, and we have a rook on d1, and we are sort of trying to obliterate over there.
Yeah, so the second best move in this position would be bishop f5, winning a pawn or two. It threatens back rank checkmate on d8, basically. I mean, black can sack their queen, but for all intents and purposes, you know, the threat on d8 is game winning. So black more or less has to play bishop d7. Any other move is totally losing. Like trading on d1 just makes it worse, right? Because now they can't even control the d file to play bishop d7. So basically you play bishop f5, second best move. Black plays bishop d7, you play bishop h7, and that's going to have a big impact on whether or not you win the game, right? You grab two pawns immediately. One of them is the pawn that covers their king. One of them is a pawn that makes your h-pawn into a passer. So now black's basically lost in the middle game and lost in the end game. So they need something pretty dramatic to happen to reverse the course of the game at this point, right? So bishop f5 is great. There's an even better move than bishop f5, which I think 100% ends the game, unless I miscalculated.
Well, okay, so
let's say you play bishop f5 or bishop f1. What's the only defensive move for black? Against bishop f5, bishop f1, bishop e2.
Yeah, they probably have to move the bishop, right?
Yeah. So the only defensive move is bishop d7. Do you have a move that makes bishop d7 less good?
Oh, okay. So bishop b5, and they can't take it because you're background mating them.
So that's like the closest thing you have to a knockout here is bishop b5.
Okay.
And that's, I mean, a lot of 1600s might just resign. If you were playing a master, they would fight on. There's one variation for black to keep playing. So, you know, which would be rook d1 check, rook d1, queen b5, sacking the queen after rook d8, queen e8. I mean, not that many 1600s will even see or try this. Most of them will just resign, basically. But if you get here, you go queen h6 check, important to win the h-pawn, and then take their queen. And now this endgame you can win pretty easily if you advance the h-pawn. And, you know. So I would call that like a full knockout. That move, bishop b5, is just devastation. And so that's definitely something that can help and level up your ability to play these sacrifice positions, is sensing that tactical moment, whether or not you find bishop b5, right? If you see the rook on d8, probably finding bishop f5 is good enough to win the game like 85% of the time or so, right? So and similar to that position with knight f6, bishop f6, seeing queen e4 is, you know, it's just that little extra boost in calculation. I understand that's part of why, you know, when you were 1100, 1200, 1300, you didn't trust yourself to play these kind of positions. You're like, well, I'm not going to find this kind of brilliant move like bishop b5, right? You're like, yeah, I see a move like this now and then in a, you know, in a famous GM game somebody shows me or something, but like I'm not finding bishop b5. So how am I supposed to play this position, right? So there is an element where if you continue to improve your calculation and your alertness, you will, it would help you to play these positions, right? But one of the things is, if you don't put yourself in sacrifice positions, you probably don't get a lot of games where you have the move bishop b5 as a winning move to find or not find. So where are you going to get better at doing it? Doing puzzles only helps so much because once somebody tells you there's a winning move, it's totally different. I could show you this position instead of sparring with you, instead of making you play a gambit with me. I could just give you a bunch of tactical puzzles that come from attacking games and tell you, hey, can you find the move for white? And yeah, you might find bishop b5 sometimes because it's a puzzle, but you're not actually getting better at finding it in a game. The way to get better at finding in a game is partly to play more games where you sacrifice material, where you have to look for those kind of moves. Every now and then you might find it, but more often you'll find it after the game. In other words, you play the game, you don't find it, then you go back over the game and you go, oh my gosh. And you had a feeling like maybe I've got something even better here, right? Like you did fine in the game. You got to an end game that was fine. But I think you had some sense like maybe there was something better somewhere around here. So it's possible that even if you miss something in a game, when you go back and go through the game, you might find bishop b5. Or even if you don't, you could go through the game and you could make some marks on it. Say like, here I thought I should have something better, but I couldn't find it. You upload the game to Chess Dojo. You send the link to some other people, right? And then they come in and comment and say, hey, you had bishop b5 here. Or they might just say, hey, you had bishop takes f5 here, right? And then that allows you to get better because you're dealing with that kind of stuff, you see? So it's a process. It's not overnight. You're partly right to fear that there's elements of playing these positions that you don't have all the skills yet and, oh, you know, what if I don't find the right move? But part of the way that you ever get there is by putting that first foot forward and trying it, you know? And then on the other hand, you'll see games like the knight g5 game, which is a game that should hopefully increase some confidence, right? You play the knight g5 game, you maybe don't play all the right moves, but your opponent's going to play wrong moves sometimes, right? And that game, you got queen h7, bishop g6, queen g7, and you slaughtered somebody, and you got to play kind of an attacking game. So you're gaining practice with that kind of calculation and looking at those aggressive moves, and with feeling the difficulty for black of organizing their undeveloped rook a8, bishop c8, while trying to cover the threats to their king, and they're trying to balance, when do I just play a defensive move, or when do I try and get my development done, and develop through that. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, let's try another branch. Let's go knight e4, knight d4, knight d4, queen d4, bishop c3, queen b6. And you'll play knight f6 check, and I will take with my pawn instead of my bishop. Why don't you try that once for white?
All right. Let's see. So we go here, then we go here. Pretty devastating. Yeah, so queen g4.
Okay, nice. Playing faster than normal. I will play king h8 quickly as well.
Yeah. And actually now I realize I didn't even intend to play queen g4. So queen h5. Yeah, I should have played queen h5 in one move. I thought about queen h5, and then for some reason I continued looking at the line, and when I ended up playing the move, I played queen g4. So that happens to me sometimes. So okay, queen h5.
Queen h5. Okay. And now black was planning to play f5, but unfortunately it's illegal. So you win. Yeah. Yay!
Mouse live one. Yeah, I didn't even. Yeah, I was going to play queen h5 first, honestly. Yeah, okay, let's do it again with queen h5 first. I mean, even though this actually ended up working better, but yeah,
You
the
want to go
original
queen h5
idea was
first?
going queen h5. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, now they get to play f5. Oh no.
Okay, now I was going to go queen h6.
Okay.
Oh, okay, there's f6. Yeah, of course. Okay, and now what? Okay, maybe we can try this. Look, okay, yeah, maybe that, yeah. Rook E1. Rook F1. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, and now yeah, now you move Ocus. Rook E3. Okay, and now if we go here, boom. So that's yeah, there is that. But still doesn't look bad. We also have no, never mind. Um, okay, so how about but there's this. Never mind. There's no that. Yeah. Rook A E1. Okay, and now here sounds okay to me. So bishop F5.
Okay. This move would have been an interesting option 2 moves ago as well, right? Uh, in this position
Oh,
here,
okay.
after
In that
rook
position, I
e1,
didn't see it. In
bishop
this position, I
d7,
saw it.
you could have done this before lifting the rook.
Yeah.
It was a important option. I don't know if you
Yeah, and it was
had
much
yet
more
considered it
powerful
then.
there, it seems, because I was also threatening mate over there and threatening mate again after.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's see what's going on here. Okay, if we go over there, this, and can simply just roll back. Wait. Oh, there's, hmm, yeah, we'll always, yeah, I was trying to see if there was something more interesting to do, but I mean, I said in the absence of finding it fast, I will just bishop e6 should be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, we're done with that. Can simply go back then. If I go back eventually, there's that. What about this? There's this. Hmm. So just if I do this, there's that. Oh, geez, that's a little bit inconvenient. Since I can also do that. No, there's this. If you mind. I can believe it's kind of risky, but not quite so much. Uh, yeah, I think so. So, G3. Okay, but there, something afterwards.
He saw my checkmate in one thread, folks.
Uh,
That's good calculating. Good fighting.
okay. Uh, Probably should. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, looks all right. Not completely sure. But oh wait, but after this. Yeah, okay, so bishop f6. Okay, queen f6. Okay, and now is that over there? So oh, and it's this. Oh, but I have this. Yeah, no. So queen d8 looking like it's checkmate or not? No, no, not really, because there's that. Uh, still should be a decent move, probably. Yeah, so queen d8. Yeah, and now that probably. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So bishop d5.
Nice. I could play one more move, but I think you're going to play rook takes e8 next, so I think we can stop here and resign for black. I feel like you fought pretty well and would have beaten another 1600 in this game.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I hope I'm giving you a balanced take on is the fact that if you calculated better, you could do even better in these kind of positions. But even without calculating better, these positions can still be played. It's not a reason that you absolutely can't try any of this stuff, right? So, for example, at the very beginning of this particular spar, right, you accidentally played queen g4, king h8, queen h5, checkmating in 2. But actually, you had planned to miscalculate that and play queen h5. So we went back and played queen h5, f5. So basically, we've missed a checkmate in 2. Black gets a whole new lease on life to play the game. Now you're playing this whole game. Again, you're down a pawn. There are some weaknesses. You're getting like a real feeling for what these kind of games play like. Right? And you see that there are extra chances. Right? And here, maybe bishop f5 is a good move. You didn't find it the first time, I think. You found it the second time. I actually, I don't know that I had a chance to stop it because I had to keep developing my pieces towards covering my king. So I just want to emphasize, like, yes, if you calculate better, the score will go up, right? Like seeing a knockout mate in 2 versus playing out this game, which is kind of 50-50, is going to make a big difference. But you still have chances. You can still play this even if you don't see every single opportunity. And we got into a tactical fight a few moves later, which you did win, right? And by playing this more and more, you'll get more and more creative with your calculation. And like right now, you probably wouldn't consider in this position the move rook h3. But eventually, a move like rook h3 will crop up as a candidate move for you when you've been playing these positions more often. The idea is to threaten queen h7, rook h7 checkmate with the queen sack. And if they play pawn takes bishop, because your rooks are no longer doubled, you've maybe calculated rook e7, bishop f6 check, rook g7 check, here mate, because you pin that rook. So amazingly, you can play rook h3 in a position like this, and your opponent can't take your bishop either, right? So this is like a very imaginative move, right? There are going to be more and more levels of calculation and imaginative problem solving that you can get to and that you can do. But one of the ways to get there is to get more positions like this. So you're dealing with these kind of thoughts, right? And you came up with this idea of breaking through along the E file tactically. Just because I needed to be sitting here defending F6 meant that I was vulnerable on the E file. So you came up with a new idea during the game, which you can refine and use in future games as well, right? And then you chose a very straightforward approach here. Instead of my crazy rook h3, you take the pawn on e6, breaking through with your rooks, right? Emphasizing that the rooks are good on the E file at the moment. And in all resulting positions, f6 is going to be shaky. There will always be ideas of rook takes e7, bishop f6. So it's going to be very hard for me to cover this position long term. Your opponent's going to throw moves like, rook g2 and bishop c5 at you in positions like this, I think. Like what I did. I just tried some desperation tactics, and you handled them. Yeah. Okay, so that's the first feeling for some of these positions, just straight down a pawn. And let's go here. 94. Bishop c3. Okay, one of the things that I think makes under 2,000 players uncomfortable with a pawn sack like this is also the fact that the calculation feels a little bit out of control. When you play the move bishop c3, your opponent might play queen d8 or queen b6 or queen a4 or maybe even queen d7. Probably not queen d7, right? But the fact that there's like 3 branches, and then in response, you don't necessarily have a mate. You're looking at like, can I weaken their pawn structure or should I develop my rook? It feels just like out of control. Like there's just too many options. You can't really conceive of them, right? So you have to play the position without a full like grasp on it calculationally, right? Like you have to just believe like they'll move their queen somewhere. I will get another tempo. I will either shatter their pawn structure or I will develop a rook, looking at a rook lift, right? They still need some time to get the bishop out of c8. To get it out of c8, they probably have to go through d7, but the d file's open. Like I've got all these like opportunities to get something out of this. And when I play a move like bishop c3, I've never calculated what I'm going to do against queen a4, queen b6, and queen d8. It's too much, right? You're just going to flag if on every move you're calculating all those options. I have a feeling for what I have, and then depending where they go, then I start crunching my options, right? I'm probably leaning towards, if they go somewhere like a4 or b6, I'm going to look at taking on f6. And leaning towards, if they go queen d8 defending f6, I'm probably looking at one of my rooks to d1. Like I'll have like some feel for which move makes what more likely, right? If their queen tries to defend the king side, then maybe I'm bringing out my rooks. If their queen wanders far away, maybe I'm trying to break the king side right away. So I've got some sense maybe. But I'm doing the crunching after they play their move. Otherwise, it's too much crunching, right? Similar to there was a position where you were thinking of queen h7, check, king f8, and you're like not sure how you're going to proceed in the following position. And I said, well, are you not going to play queen h7? Like you can't always plan too much ahead. Sometimes play queen h7. Then develop a rook, and just take it step by step a little bit more. At the same time as you get better, you have more tactical ideas popping up for you, and that gives you more stuff to look at and to crunch through. So if you've got a lot of great ideas, you can start crunching through them. But if you're having trouble processing all the moves, you don't want to slow yourself down because you're low on confidence is going to be one of the reasons why I feel like you're going to be going a little bit slowly, right? You don't want to slow yourself down too much if it's sort of a confidence question. Just accept that you can't see that far ahead and play moves that look good to you after a certain amount of time and just keep advancing forward. And then as opportunities come up, you can start calculating the opportunities you see. Now, what I'm going to suggest for you is I'm going to give you a couple other positions that you can spar. You can spar them either against other people from the Improvers group or dojoers or anyone you've met along the way. Or even, worst case scenario, against like a chess.com computer engine if you set it to like 17, 1800. Normally they're inflated by maybe 200 points to make us feel good about ourselves. So if you want to spar a position with a chess.com computer engine, maybe set it to 17, 1800, something like that, and get some experience. So I've got a few kind of positions to give you, basically a few fen. Let's see, how can I show them into the classroom?
Yeah, one question before we see that. So
Yeah.
right at the beginning of all of this, like if you had this position in the initial position and had to decide on whether to make the sacrifice, what was it that you base the sacrifice on in this case? Because I mean, it's like sort of in this case, like you said, like development wise, it doesn't look like black is really behind. Like only that bishop is there. It's just the only thing they have undeveloped. So how would you know that you get enough activity to say that it's worth a pawn?
Right. Like, how do I know that I don't necessarily need to defend d4 here? So
Yeah, well, what
basically,
will give you the hint, so to say?
to begin with, I don't know for sure, right? So
Yeah.
we're talking about like a sense. The first thing is, like, when I'm playing an IQP position, it's already a position where I'm slightly thinking in terms of like aggressive play. So I'm already looking, is there a way for me to get away with not defending the pawn? That's like a starting attitude for me very often, right? So I'm looking at this position, and normally the first move I'm asking myself is, can I just play rook d1? Right? Can I because everybody has their own biases, right? Some people want to grab space, some people want to weaken the opponent's pawn structure, some people are looking to grab the bishop pair. I'm always looking to get ahead in development. Like, that's something that I value very heavily. So I look at a position like this. I see I'm already one move ahead in development because of the bishop on c8. I know that often it takes two moves for that bishop to really find its home. So what I'd like to play is a move like rook to d1. That's kind of like, that's just my own bias and values in chess. When I first look at a position like that, it's immediately telling me, like, I'm looking at rook d1. If I'm, in chess, if you're ahead by one tempo, or maybe two tempi, that's usually not enough to start attacking your opponent. But it is enough that if your opponent attacks a pawn, they often don't actually have time to make good on that threat. You see what I mean? Because then we're going to start talking three tempi ahead instead of two tempi ahead, right? Or maybe four tempi ahead, because sometimes they'll have to retreat after they take it, right? So if I can develop a rook here, then I'm two tempi ahead, bishop and rook, compared to my opponent's bishop and rook on c8 and a8. And if you tell me they're going to take a pawn, then I know I'm at least three tempi ahead after they do. And if they're going to have to move the queen on d4 again because I put my rook on the d file, then honestly, I already know I'm four tempi ahead latently, right? So even without the very best move knight e4, actually, I haven't computer checked if knight e4 is the best move, but it is the move that I've played in this position years ago. It's the move which Gadakamsky played in this position in his match with Karpov. So that was a sort of world championship match. I mean, Kasparov was really the world champion at the time, but it was the FIDE championship. So it was like a big match, best of 24, etc. So Gadakamsky played knight e4 in this position a couple times against Karpov. But even without that, if I just played my random rook d1 move, and they play knight d4, queen d4, I already see that I'm four tempi up, right? Rook and bishop, the queen's going to have to make another move, and it's my turn, right? So, like, I know I've got a lot of time here to do stuff, right? You could even play towards sides other than the king side, right? We've been playing with bishop c3 towards the king side. In this position, you can play rook fd1 probably. And then if black plays knight d4, you go takes, knight b5, queen d8, you know, rook c1, something like that. And you're going into c7 with bishop f4 and stuff. There's a lot of room to play a position like this with the tempi that we have. So as far as like hints, a hint to me is I'm already a little bit ahead on development. If they're going to win a pawn, I'm going to get another tempo of development. So I'm feeling like it's plausible. Then it's a matter of saying, like, well, do I have any reasonable targets to use my initiative with, right? Like, is there anything I want to go after? Like a rook on c7, or do I have a scenario where I prevent the bishop on c8 from ever getting out? Like, if I could double rooks on the d file and prevent bishop d7, that would be a scenario where I would sack a pawn happily, right? Can I make a threat on the king side, break up their pawn structure at f6? Again, those are things that like lead me to look in that direction. But it's also like, a lot of personal bias, as you probably hear from my answer, right? Like I have a bias that I'm looking at that kind of stuff first, and maybe in the wrong position, I'm also looking at it.
Yeah. But that's what I wanted to know. Yeah, how do you what do you base it on
Right.
when you decide to go for it? So
Like
yeah, that's good.
sometimes even when I don't have a development lead, I ask myself, do I really need to defend my pawn? Like, because I don't like to play passive moves, I don't know how much that's a good or a bad habit, but being slightly dissatisfied with passive moves is probably somewhat a good habit to have, that you're looking, is there not a better move I could play? Okay. So for now, some exercise I would give you the position after knight d4, queen d4, bishop c3, queen d8, because we've just sparred queen b6. I would say we've sort of successfully sparred queen b6 for today, so I would tell you spar queen d8 a few times, white, black, against somebody else. And then I guess I'll just send you fens by email for a couple of these other gambits I have in mind, but for anybody watching along, one of the gambits I have in mind for Francisco to try is this one here, which comes out of a Grand Prix Sicilian. Then I've got another one which is similar, which is a Scandinavian, I guess. ED5, knight f6, c4, c6, d takes c6, knight takes c6. So that's similar to the Sicilian one. And then the last example I had for him is just basically the Marshall attack. D5 in the Ruy Lopez is an example of black's just down a pawn, and they know white's queenside is going to come out slowly. And so they've got time to make some threats and build some initiative, but they're also not just immediately checkmating white, right? So it's more of a true pawn sack. So those are some positions that you can start sparring with in order. I'll send you a list of fens by email, and you can work on those. I also meant to ask you, although we're basically running out of time very quickly, and I know you've got the question about repertoire. Have you seen the two videos now that I sent you from YouTube of sort of sacrifice games? One a King's Gambit, one a Sicilian.
I still haven't looked at the Sicilian game.
Okay.
I did look at the King's Gambit one thoroughly. Like I
Okay.
also made my own PGN about it.
Okay.
So yeah, that one I
So
looked at it
you've played
very
around
much.
with it a little bit in that sense.
Yeah, but the other one I haven't looked at yet.
Cool. Yeah, the King's Gambit one is much more like those games are more disorienting than this kind of single pawn sacrifice game, right? There we're talking like pieces, rooks, exchanges. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of how much you're down or up, and like it's like stretching your imagination to believe it's possible. As you're watching it, you're probably like, there's no way this is actually sound. But we'll take a step back with these pawn sack ones for a bit, and then the Sicilian one has a pretty classic pawn sack in it, but then it goes kind of bonkers as well.
Okay.
But yeah, basically you should be doing a bunch of sparring, and so you should be playing sort of like basically blitzy time controls, like maybe 5 minutes plus 5 seconds to get in more games. And you should play both sides so you also feel the danger from the other side, if possible.
All
Okay.
right.
If that's clear, we can talk about your repertoire questionnaire for 5 minutes.
Oh, all right. Yeah,
Um,
so
and then maybe next lesson, if you have any questions about the 2 videos I sent you, we could answer any questions you have about those games.
all right. Sounds good.
So for your repertoire question, the key thing I would say for you is I don't want your repertoire to grow faster than you can spar it. So when building an opening repertoire, you're sort of like learning / memorizing some moves in openings that you want to repeat and that you enjoy playing, and you're sort of learning these moves are better than these other moves. But all of those positions, it's almost even more important in your games to have practiced playing games in those positions, right? Like my knowledge, my memory of opening theory in the Najdorf Sicilian, for example, which I've been playing since I was, I don't know, 13 or 14, so like 30 years. My theoretical knowledge in it is not necessarily greater than the average 1600 in our chat. Like I routinely am looking at games online and people rated 16, 1700 in chat know more opening theory about those lines than I do. So I'm playing the Najdorf with relatively like not an amazing number of memorized moves, but my score in the Najdorf is extremely high. Over my whole career, it's high. Just recently I've been playing Blitz for a couple months, and then I looked on chess.com at my stats, and at some point my score in the Najdorf was 100%. So just literally 100% for like 3 months against other people with the same rating as me. I often have a bad position in theory at move 7 or 8 for 1 or 2 moves. I, in theory, have a bad position because I haven't played the theoretically most approved move. But I know how to evaluate the positions. I know the themes. I know the plans for white and for black. And eventually, like, I just come out on top every single game. So, very important principle I would give to you is you don't want your repertoire to go beyond what you've been able to spar, to get out of control, to have a bunch of like positions which in theory you think you've memorized some move order, but you don't know how to play the position. So I would start very, very, very basic with your repertoire. So basically you could start, for example, with 2 positions. The position of the Najdorf at move 6 and the position of bishop b5 check at move 3. That could be like, you could start with 2 positions to spar. Once you've played each of those positions 5 times, you get to add a 3rd position. You see what I mean? And when you've sparred that position 5 times, you get to add a 4th position. So you never let the repertoire get out of control from what you actually have some idea about, and it's never stuffed with moves that you don't understand or remember. It's always going to be stuff that you do remember. So you start with the Najdorf position, then you play the bishop b5 check position, then I would add a closed Sicilian position, knight c3 or something. Partly you want to add positions based on what you actually see in your games, right? So I think you would add a bunch of anti-Sicilians before you got really deep into the Najdorf, right? I think then the 5th position you would add would probably be something like knight f3, bishop c4 without them playing d4, right? And then they play like, I don't know, d3 castles, a4, knight c3, rook e1, I don't know, something like that, right? And so once you've sparred each of those positions, 5 to 10 times, then you can go deeper or add other positions. You can also make your variation longer, right? Like let's say you play 5 or 6 games with bishop b5 check, and after a few games you decide that you prefer knight d7 to bishop d7 or bishop d7 to knight d7. You can push your position, meaning like at first your sparring position could literally be on move 3 bishop b5 check, right? But if you decided, for example, that the best move was bishop d7 for you, and you knew you wanted to recapture on d7 with your queen, then at some point you could change your sparring position to bishop d7, queen d7, so you advance it further. And that's your new sparring position. You're never going back and sparring the move 3 position because you've decided what you want to do. Or at some point, as you get deeper into it, you can split it into two variations. So now you could have bishop d7, queen d7, castles, and you could have bishop b5, bishop d7, a4. Like you're playing some better players, and some of them are playing moves like a4 or c4 instead of taking on d7. And so you want to spar a position that reflects that variation that you've started hitting, right? And so you split. So you can push your sparring positions a little bit deeper once you've like played it enough times that you know where you want to go. You can also split it from now and then when you're getting to a level where you're like, oh, this other line is interesting and I'm seeing it a few times. Let me make that its own sparring position. Then you have to spar that position once you've added it to your repertoire before you build on something else. A necessary thing to believe to approach it this way, which is implied in what I've been saying, is it's okay for one part of your repertoire to be better than another part. In other words, you could work on your Sicilian as black. You don't have to also keep your d4 defense at the same level as your Sicilian defense, right? You can play some openings that you've done no work on and other openings you've done work on. And then eventually you come around and work on those if you want, right? So normally I would say you start with one repertoire position against e4, maybe like, Sicilian. Or in your case, maybe I would say two, the bishop b5 and the Najdorf, right? And then against d4, you'll start with some like basic position, right? Like 3 moves into the main defense you want to play there. And I would say you've already played the Najdorf more than 5 times, so you could already consider that to be like a position you've played, and you can add other positions and consider that one sparred. But if at some point you want to have one position with 6 bishop g5 and one position with 6 bishop e3, etc., add those one at a time, spar them a few times, check them off, and then work on the next one. When you build the repertoire, like putting moves into a game analyzer, a game database, or something like that, make sure to mark which positions are your sparring positions, and then change it when you change it. And leave some comment for yourself in words about what is or isn't going on in a position, right? Like, this position I like for black, here's like the main couple things people have done against me, or here's the main plan that I like to do, or here's the thing to watch out for. The one bad thing about the position is the bishop on c8, or whatever it might be. So you sort of just build it out gradually. Same with your white repertoire. You can start with one defense for black that you either feel like working on, or that you feel like you've never worked on before, or whatever, or that you feel like you've already worked on and it would be easier to knock it out. And so you'll add one sparring position against the French defense and then try it a few times and say, great, Or maybe you'll switch to 1d4 and start doing a repertoire for white with 1d4. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I mean, apart from that, I mean, that explains a lot. Another thing I wanted to ask you, like I said there, and well, this kind of answers it. So when it's a really forcing variation, so what you would say is still not to like register all the moves and try to commit them to memory, but to just spar the position and see what comes up, right? Like, let's say, for instance, the variations in the bishop g5 Sicilian that is known for being extremely theoretically heavy.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do about that?
So one thing could be, for example, you could spar bishop g5 one day or maybe 2 days in a row with a training partner, right? So let's say one day you play 6 games and the next day you play 6 games. And over that time, that means 6 games with white and 6 games with black. And maybe it took you 2 hours each day. Having played those 12 games, some with white, some with black, you've got some idea of which positions or which approaches or plans you liked for white or for black. You could sit down and try and add a few moves to your repertoire based on what you remember from your games. That already makes certain that the moves you put in are going to be moves that mean something to you and you have some memory of, as opposed to turning on a computer engine and just putting in the top move from the computer engine from move 5 to move 10, and now your repertoire goes to move 10 instead of move 5, except do you remember any of those moves or know what the meaning is behind any of them, right? So if you do your sparring first and then add moves to your repertoire based on your sparring, you'll be adding moves that you believe in for some reason. You can explain what you like or don't like about this approach or that approach. Sometimes in my repertoires, I'll mark two different options. Like I'll say like this is like what I'm putting as my main line, but this other line looks equally good to me. And I just have that marked in my repertoire. So that means, for some reason in the future I want to try something different, or I lose a game, or I play it in round 1 and I want to surprise my opponent in round 3. Like I just have it like marked there that there's an equal variation.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're taking those moves from your memory, based on your experience of sparring some games, the moves might not be as good as the computer recommendations, and yet you will be more equipped to use that repertoire because you'll actually remember them and the purpose behind them, and you can sometimes do better with a third best move where you know the meaning than the best move when you don't know the meaning.
Yeah, makes sense.
And let's say
And
you play a line that you come up with like that, and at some point you just start losing every game with that line. There is a place and time where you might need to like ask a computer what's a better move. Like I've lost 4 or 5 sparring games in a row in this variation, or people are randomly playing it against me in Blitz or Rapid online when I'm not even just sparring with a partner, but it's just coming up and I'm scoring badly. And I need some new idea or some better move. Then you can go and you can find one move. You can add one move to your... Don't add a 10-move variation, It's going to be out of control. But you can get like a one-move suggestion. Like, oh, this move on move 6 that I'm playing is bad, and there's a move that's like half a pawn better. So I'll put that move in, but now I need to spar that move a little bit and understand it to absorb it. Otherwise, it's not gonna increase your score.
makes sense. And so the same approach you would use, like no matter now at 1600 or later at 1900 or something, same approach, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, as you get better and better, there's a little more room to put in to like ask the computer for help because you're more likely to understand what the computer's suggesting a little bit faster and incorporate it more easily. But in general, I think it's like for most people a pretty good approach to like understand things bit by bit and get good at one variation instead of all variations at once. Like work piecemeal through your repertoire, and if there are parts where you just don't have any prep, that's fine. Like it's okay. Like it won't really hurt you too much. And if it starts to hurt you, like you start to do badly in one particular variation, then that's your next variation to spar and prepare out a little bit.
Okay.
So
So it would be the
yeah.
same kind of approach except with more moves to add, so to say, as you get better, right?
Yeah, as you get better, it's going to grow. You're going to want to push it deeper, and you're going to want to. I mean, basically, like a 1900, it just has to put in more hours, right? And a 2100, even more hours. And the lines are going to go a bit deeper, but they're going to be better at remembering them. They're going to be better at generating them. They're going to be better at understanding them. So they'll be building a bigger repertoire, but they can also work faster. And at the same time, to compete with other players at their level, they're actually forced to work more hours than like a 1600 has to work to compete with 1600s, right? So all of that kind of goes in there. So the answer does change a little bit as you go up levels, but as a general approach, this will serve you pretty well for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah. I worked on my repertoire quite a bit the last 2 months, and I built out a bunch of like computer generated variations, and I could understand the moves. At my level, I was able to like play around with it a bit and be like, oh, I understand why this works here and this doesn't work there. Although even that, like I really had to go back and forth and try this and try that, and I could understand a lot of stuff. And even still, I found that I was like forgetting most of it. So until I've sparred it deeply, it's actually still useless to me. So I've got my positions marked in a sparring as sparring positions in a framework of pretty well organized variations, and still that's just like it tells me where I need to work. It's not even. So it's a slightly different order than I'm suggesting for you because I'm starting with like computer variations from the get-go now, as opposed to just playing my moves, losing until I've lost enough to go ask the engine for a better move. So I'm starting with engine moves, but it's still completely useless to me till I've sparred my way through the whole thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So right now, how deep would you go with a variation, for instance?
For me,
Yeah.
for my repertoire,
Yeah, yeah, for your
ideally
repertoire.
10 to 20 moves probably.
20 moves. Wow.
Somewhere between 10 and 20 moves. Depends how like intense the position is and stuff. And I don't necessarily expect to always remember all of that, but if it's in my file and then I'm preparing for a game for tomorrow, then I have it in a digestible fashion where I can crunch it much faster than if I have to build it on the day of, right? Like if I'm in a tournament and I'm playing you tomorrow and I see that you played the Nightorf and I've got some Bishop E3 Nightorf variations that I don't remember, but that I've analyzed out and explained to myself. So my annotations have lots of explanations to myself, even though at the moment I'm writing them, I understand it. I put in the explanations so I can use it as like a review sheet in the future and relearn it super fast. Because during a tournament, I don't want to work more than 1 hour on opening prep because I want to save my energy for playing the game. So I need to be able to digest the variations very, very quickly and remember them very quickly from what's in my
Okay.
files.
But when it's like games on the internet, for instance, when you're playing, because I mean, when it's preparation against a specific opponent, yeah, I understand because you're preparing for that specific opponent, so it makes sense to even go deeper. But if you're talking about like a random game online or Blitz or whatever, well, on
Mm-hmm.
Blitz, I suppose you play whatever. But I mean, then how deep would you say you have to go to say that you cover
I mean,
sort of
zero. If
everything?
I'm just playing random blitz against random people online, first of all, like it like matters very little if I win or lose. Then it matters very little if I get a good or bad position out of the opening. So I don't need any prep to play
Okay.
blitz on
Yeah.
on the internet. But I mean, I built a repertoire for those blitz games, and I've been doing a bit better. The opening repertoire may have helped me a little bit, but frankly, I rarely remember past move 5 or 6 during my blitz games, despite all the like long variations I've built. So
So in that one, you also build long
I've
variations, like
built
20
long
moves deep or something.
variations, yeah, but I
Oh,
don't
okay.
remember any of them. So
All right.
yeah,
I mean, I just wanted to know like how it escalates, like
yeah,
up until which point. But yeah.
yeah. And again, like if it were a classical game, I might be able to remember a little bit more because having done the work at some point, even if I've forgotten it, I might be able to dig it back out of my head, right? Like, well, there was this and this, and I remember wondering about this position, and how does the bishop get to f4? Oh, it must be because of this. So I might be able to reconstruct some stuff if I spent 10, 15 minutes thinking about it. I can maybe pull some things back. But in a blitz game, like I don't want to spend any time in the opening, right? So generally I'm just blitzing out some random moves, having forgotten my preparation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. All right, I have to run. So
Yeah,
any further
sure.
questions, just email them to me. I'll be happy to handle them. And let's meet again next week.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much for the lesson and take care.
Yeah. Oh, and also I'll just mention, Francisco, like this month, my brain's kind of upside down because I'm commentating this tournament in Goa. So normally I'm like working from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. my time. Uh, it means sometimes I won't answer an email or I'll like not be reachable well or whatever. I'll get back to you when I sort myself out, but sometimes I'm just like in a stupor all day.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, no worries. I understand.
All right.
All
Good
right, thank
work.
you. Take care.
I'll send you the fens and then you've got a bunch of sparring to do.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, chat, and I will say goodbye to all of you as well.